All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of League One on the Rocks. We have a loaded episode for you tonight. My name is Rich. You can find me on Twitter at I'm Rich, but I'm not. Joined as always by co-host over on the other side of the screen there, Bryan. You can find him on Twitter at Mediocre Ace. Bryan, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing a lot better now that I've got YouTube figured out, so now we can actually be live, so that is always good.
Yes. Yep. And we're just going to go jump straight into the introductions. In the past, we've had to sound off the celebrity alarm and give an intro of their whole like CV and everything. We have three people that we can do that for tonight.
Hmm.
Uh, Returning for the third time on the podcast, co-owner of Tormenta, Darren Van Tassel. How you doing?
I am well. I want to know who else has been on here 3 times. That's helpful to hear. Good to have you
Ooh,
guys, and what a fun time if we're live on YouTube. This is we're marking a big moment on the show's history, I would guess.
yep. And we have another guest. This he is joining for the first time from Richmond. We have Rob Ukrup. So he's the chairman and CEO of Richmond Kickers. Uh, Now, if you didn't know this, he is an absolute legend, not only at Richmond but also at Davidson. He has a ton of records. But if you look past that, he also won the 1995 Open Cup, and he was the MVP of the championship match. If you look past that, if you go to the Richmond website, there's a little bit of an Easter egg in the website there. I don't know what he's more proud of, all the records he has at Davidson and at Richmond, or winning the 95 US Open Cup, or the fact that he was able to eat an Outback's chocolate thunder from down under in under 13.26 seconds.
That's a big move.
Dang.
That's a big move for the U crops. I think I didn't know about that Easter egg. I was just always excited to be hanging out with the fellow owner who had a Open Cup title to his name.
That's more impressive.
No, we were
Yeah,
at Outback the other night, so it's a great place. I love the Chocolate Thunder. It was a game we used to run on the waitresses. You get it free if you can do it under a minute, and they said, "What about 30 seconds?" And we're like, "Yeah, we can do that." So
now,
Challenge.
another Easter egg in your description says that you wear a Band-Aid on your right shin because it makes you smile. There's got to be a story behind that. So tell us what's going on there.
no, I honestly, back in I think 1995, I saw these Kermit the Frog Band-Aids. I love Kermit the Frog. I bought them, put it on my shin, had a good game, and then superstition kind of weighed in. So um,
Do you still
tradition
do that to this
started.
day?
I do actually, because it's night. I took it off so the skin can breathe. But yeah, it's been fun. In game days I wear a pirate band-aid. I like pirates.
There you
But
go.
yeah, a little bit of superstition.
Richmond
I
fan.
can say firsthand I've seen those band-aids. And they will make you smile.
Richmond fans, that's a new tradition. Everybody wear a Band-Aid on your right shin on match days.
I'm gonna come rip it off the next time during game day, Rob.
And last but not least, we have another celebrity joining us from Windsor, Colorado. We have Casey Katofsky. He is the executive director of Future Legends Complex, a co-owner of both Northern Colorado Hailstorm and the Owls, the minor league baseball team they have there. Also making his first appearance on the pod. Now, this actually came out earlier this year, but NoCo Style listed him as the 30 under 30. Casey, how you doing?
Do it, Casey.
I'm
I
doing
like it.
great. Thank you, Rich and Brian. They clearly ran out of candidates this year. So I appreciate that. Happy to be on the show.
It is great to have you. Ooh. Well, it's great to have you guys all on the show. In each of the previous interviews you've had with other media outlets, you've all had very similar sentiments when you talked about the way that you want to own and lead the clubs that you are at, and each of those interviews featured descriptions like you want to be energetic, you want a close knit group, you want to foster that talented group of people that you have in your club for their own professional development. So having people like you involved in League One, leading your club, leading the charge for lower division soccer, that's amazing. We love the fact that you're all involved. So thank you very much.
Well, cheers, guys. I appreciate what you guys are all doing for covering our league too. It makes it a lot of fun, and we're not just operators, but we're fans of each other's teams and what we're doing as a league level. So thanks for the opportunity to come talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, the main motivation for tonight is to talk about this new development that was just announced within the past couple of weeks, and it's this new in-season tournament that we're going to be having. This new cup that's going to be featured in League One, uh, and it was just announced recently that it's going to feature a World Cup style group stage followed by a knockout, um, a tournament once they progress from the group stage. And I guess the first question I have for you is, who had the idea for the cup?
Well, do you just want us to talk on top of each other? Or do you want to call us out?
So
we
everyone is just shooting their hand up. We all had the idea.
Well, I think we were all in the room together. I can say that much. I'll just start first, and you guys can kind of keep going. It didn't it did not pop up as we were thinking about how do we make our league in League One. How do we make it different? How do we make it better? How do we make ourselves more relevant? This is all coming at the same time where there's been plenty of conversations as a league in the USL about what do we do with not just relevancy, but promotion, relegation, and all the things that come with it. That's just one of them. And in the course of doing that, when we were in Colorado Springs in the summer, one of the things that we talked about was, what if we start thinking about a balanced schedule, and we begin to think about it rather than dealing with schedule compression. If we do a balanced schedule, which will always shift given the number of teams that we have and the number of that are in, and we know where our league is growing, and there's some other folks that have been added to come into there. So a balanced schedule change different numbers. But if a balanced schedule reduces the number of regular season games that we have, guys, we got to fill them in with something. And so a cup style competition is what we talked about as a group. And we spent some time thinking about how that would work. And, we don't think we're going to always just play ourselves. But in 2024, we're going to. Maybe we'll iron some kinks out along the way. And I think we're going to have a whole lot of fun, doing it. And Rob and Casey certainly should weigh in on how we got to this point too.
I
Rob,
guess
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Casey.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rich.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Just to add to what Darren's saying, clearly what we're trying to figure out together, and we're obviously still the new guys. This is our third year we're going into. We're not trying to change anybody's perspective that's been around for so long. We also want to bring in as many fresh perspectives as we can and say, all right, clearly what we're doing is having some sort of leverage, if you'll call it that, of the US soccer world. How do we continue to be innovative in a way that's going to be received well from our fans? And so a lot of these type of conversations are in the same mindset. If we all agree we want to be as innovative as possible in a way that's not pushing the envelope too much, maybe we start with doing certain things like this that allow us to be new and exciting, but nothing that's super hard to comprehend. You know what I mean? So this was something we all agreed upon. Hey, let's try this. Again, as Darren said, are there things in the future that we can alter to it, whether it's new opponents, new structure in general to it? For sure. But let's try something, right? Let's do something that's going to be received well by our fans and by our communities. And this, we think, could be a good start to do so.
And Rob, what were your thoughts in the room as they were suggesting this tournament?
I mean, we read all the stuff that people talked about going to Colorado. Is Pro Rel coming? I know there's all the speculation. Hey, we went out there to talk about it, and there's championship meetings, there's League One meetings. In the League One meetings, we have 12 owners in a room that get along really well. We don't always agree, but we challenge each other. We ask questions. We have text threads. We speak. Heck, I probably speak to Darren 3 or 4 times a week just on random stuff when I'm walking my dog. So we talk about all this stuff. And to be fair, I think the league's the one that presented the cup idea. And, they want to explore Pro Rel, right? So the league throws it out there. I think I wasn't in the championship room. I'm pretty sure they pitched it to them too. I know everybody wants a championship League One, maybe League Two Cup. Everybody thinks that's cool, but we can only speak to what happened in our room. In our room, there was some contentious, competitive, thoughtful discussion, and we kind of arrived at, hey, we're not sure if Pro Rel is the place for us yet, but let's at least set up the table, a balanced schedule, so that we have a table. So in the event that championship wants to jump on board, Pro Rel's a thing, we're prepared to vote on it if it need be. But we thought the balanced schedule was cool. Man, I'm like everybody else. We want championship in this with us in this League Cup. It went from interleague cup to an intra-league cup. We're fine with it. It's not perfect. We know people are going to complain because that's what people like to do, and Twitter gives you, or X gives you, an opportunity to do that. But as we look at this thing, we can only control the variables we have control over, and we don't control the other clubs, the other groups. I do think there's championship teams, that want to be in this intra-league cup, make it an interleague cup. But they have what do they have, 28 teams or something?
Like
So they got a
24,
big,
24,
yes,
26.
yes. I know they lost one recently, but yeah, I mean, everybody wants it all together. I think that's the ultimate goal. I'm confident that in the next 2 years, our league, won't be as dependent on getting this many games out of this intra-league cup. I think it'd be cool just to have a knockout tournament. I think it'd be cool to have a tournament where we're paired up with a championship team. You get an aggregate home and away, and the winner advances into a knockout round. I think that'd be really cool. I know we'd love to play Charleston since they're the second oldest team. I think we have them by 1 day. That could be disputed, but hey, it's kind of cool. There's all these cool relationships. I know Northern Colorado's got Colorado Springs right on the corner. I mean, you just got all these great storytelling moments that we like to activate together. But for this year, we're going to activate within our own league, and I mean, it's fun. Like Darren and Casey and I, Casey just got married, so he wasn't in Tampa 2 weeks ago at our league meeting. So congratulations to that, Casey. I heard it was a great wedding.
Congrats, Casey.
I heard your dad got injured at the wedding, or leading up to the wedding, right? So
that's a story that I can tell you guys, depending on how much whiskey is already in my
He was limping a lot when I last saw him, Casey.
To be fair, he tripped on stairs that were inside. So you can say how slippery they were, but they were indoors. I don't know what he told you guys, but
it's a comforting thought.
So
listen, I think Rob's really nailing it, and you guys are getting some real inside, scoop inside soccer sort of deals. Listen, the League One owners really just made a decision. Hey, let's plant our flag. Let's get ready to go. If others are going to come join us, great. But if not, let's make this a fun cup. Let's do something quite different. I mean, who else would have a tiebreaker with most goals scored? That's different. When we're done, if someone advances in the wild card who's just won, hadn't won many games, but just smashes or keeps losing 8-6, okay, then we'll see what's there, and then we'll reevaluate and see what happens. But by the way, I think you'd have to lose a lot of 8-6 games or 4-3 or 6-5 games to advance just on goals. But we'll see how it goes. We had a lot of just really thoughtful conversations about, when the game ends, we'll go to kicks. We'll play for another point if we're tied at that stage. What else can we do? Who else can we play? Those are big decisions that we want to make. As Rob says, our league's going to grow. We're not going to necessarily need as many cup games in our format. I mean, one of the reasons we did this many, if you just do the math, last year we had 32 regular season games. This year, if you count the cup, we've got 30. And part of that is because it gives us an opportunity. We're going to end up with playoff games, theoretically. Remember, we've got 8 teams can advance this year. So you got a chance for extra games there. You've got a chance for extra games in the cup competition. So quite frankly, even though we only have 30 scheduled, we could certainly be north of 32. But we took care of some of the schedule compression, if you will. I think our schedule, there are not many midweek games. So the guys are doing better. Unless you want a midweek game, then you're happy to make those things happen. We even tried to give some thought to travel. We're still, third division. Travel is a tough one. It's a lot easier on places like South Georgia and Richmond than it is in Colorado on travel. And because of that, we said, all right, so we need to get X number of cup games this year. Let's think about the teams where travel is a little bit easier for them in a cup regional style format. And then let's get a home and an away game outside of our region, and we'll travel the farthest. So we're going to make an extra trip to Fresno, for example, and Knoxville will come to us. I think I think Greenville, who also has a decent travel schedule, is going to make an extra trip to Spokane. I think I have that right. So we did that really thinking about what each other's best needs were. It's not perfect. But I think as an ownership group, we really value each other as partners and want to make those things work the best. We knew, for example, that Madison and Omaha have really, created a nice rivalry, but they were going to be in different pods, if you will. But we made sure that their out of bracket competition was against each other. Those are the kind of things we can do. We'll reevaluate what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We get to play Richmond 4 times this year. That's tough for Tormenta because Richmond gives us fits. I'm not sure when the last time was we actually beat the Kickers, but we're going to get 4 chances, this coming year to try and do it. And listen, if you get a chance to play at City Stadium, it's one of the greatest venues around, and so we're more than happy to be there twice too.
Man, we are hitting on so many topics that we want to talk about. Bryan, I will let you take the charge on the next one because there were so many there that
Yeah, I mean, we're going through the outline here, and it's just like, yep.
You guys
check,
have 3
check,
owners in
check,
there. You better
yep.
take your shots.
So we do have some questions, and I do want to get to ones that the fans put out because obviously we're kind of their mouthpiece. So a lot of these questions were inspired by fans of the pod. At RVA is red. When the idea was pitched to USL, how receptive were the League Two and Championship owners to the idea, as far as you guys know, anyway?
I mean, I said it earlier. We'd love to have more teams in it. We're not in their meetings. We did have one joint meeting in Colorado, and what we learned very quickly is that it's harder to navigate a larger group than it is a smaller group. There's different economic interests as well. I mean, I think you're seeing this right now with the Open Cup issue, which this whole thing with MLS, like pulling out of the Open Cup, it's crazy, right? But everybody's looking out for their own league. In the League One, we focus on the fans and delivering content and competitive matches. And whether we get to play Louisville City, FC Charlotte, Tormenta, Northern Colorado, like for us, we want to do it as best as possible. And the teams that are on our horizon and want to be part of this League Cup, we're really excited about. I mean, we've all had private discussions with different league owners, League Two, Championship, and everybody has they look at it from a different angle. We respect those different decisions that they make, but I don't think there's anybody in the league office or in the League One that doesn't wish Championship was in this with us. Because for us, there's some storied matchups. We have Lou City, Pittsburgh, Charleston going back really long time. Even Charlotte have some of those same rivalries. So selfishly, we'd love to re-engage a few of those. But everybody's got to do what's best for them. Darren hit it earlier. The travel is a really, really dangerous part for this league. We're excited as more teams come on board. It's not perfect. We'd love to have 2 divisions where there's 2 conferences. I think the championship had it really set up nicely last year with the balanced table, and it's how it needs to be at some point. But you've got some committed owners here that have all lost a ton of money in the last 5 years coming out of COVID, especially, but are committed to making this thing work and being patient and working with the league. Lee O'Neill has been fantastic for our league, driving the narrative and helping us contain cost, working with the league to make sure that any new partnerships that we have come on protect us, because that's really important. That we want to make sure we don't like to lose teams. I know Championship doesn't like to lose teams, but there is an economic factor in all of this, and that's why we always say, come out and support your local team. As long as you're a soccer fan, you make a new friend. That's the beauty of what happens at City Stadium. It's what happens out in Northern Colorado. It's what happens down in Tormenta.
And speaking of the economic factors that are involved in this cup, are the the buy-ins or the, I don't know what you would call the shared pot, is it big enough that each club is legitimately committed to the cup, or how seriously are clubs going to be taking it throughout the season?
Well, I don't think we know yet what the final, um, prize money. Are you talking about prize money, Rich,
Yeah.
is what you're leading to? I don't think we know what that final amount is. We have a nice feel that we may well have a branding partner for the cup. So it's the League One Cup competition until it's not. Um, and that's we're very hopeful that will come with something. And it'll give us something to play for. How the prize money works. Well, we've got to see how much prize money we have, and whether those decisions are, does each club decide what they do? Do we decide, do with it specifically? How does the club want to deal with all that? I think, listen, those are decisions that are smart ones and still to come. I don't think we've sort of broached those yet because we don't know, what our prize money necessarily is, and yet we marched forward anyway, because we think this is an important step for us to do. This is what big teams do. This is what important leagues do, and it's also coming at a time. And I'll let Casey. You may be able to weigh in on this too, but it's coming at a time where, listen, Major League Baseball goes to a pitch clock.
Right.
I mean, you talk about tradition being smashed. The NBA decides to do an in-season tournament. Now, they've made a decision to count their regular season games also along the line where we decided to make those separate, but we're also following some traditions that have well been laid out before us in nations that have been playing soccer and football a lot longer than we have. So, we'll see. We're trying to borrow those kinds of things. And I think as you grow the game in our country, you better stay innovative, you better stay relevant, and you better stay focused on our fans and local soccer for us to be successful. I think those are really key ingredients, and I think that's what resonates with the kind of folks who probably listen to this podcast.
To add to that, Rich, the pod is enticing, whether it's $1 or whatever it might be. But clearly, as Darren said, we're moving forward with it, not even 100% sure what the prize is, yet we're still passionate about the prospect of competing in it, of winning in it. You guys know our head coach relatively well. He's not taking games off. I can promise you that. And our fans, as we're trying to build a new community, this soccer is new in Northern Colorado. They've never had it before. And so they're still learning what we are, what we're doing, what our competitions mean. And so they don't necessarily care if it's a scrimmage, a practice, or we're in the World Cup. They want us to win. And so we're trying to build that community factor as well. If that's important to them, they're very competitive in this area. Colorado in general as a state is known for its competition. And so we want to win as much as possible. We're going to take it seriously. And on top of that, Rob and Darren talked about this as well. We're trying to build rivalries as well. I think it helps the league. Rich and Bryan, you guys are fans of Omaha. That's our closest team for us. But in general, we like to be able to build connections with other teams and build storylines that makes it more enticing for opposing fans to watch us as well. And that doesn't mean we need to dislike each other on the field or whatnot, but it builds a connection. And I think this cup allows us to do that. We're in a group that is probably the biggest from a geographical standpoint, playing teams that don't have precedent. Spokane, this is their first year. Fuego, they've been in the league the same as us. And Omaha, we have the connection obviously with the Owl name, but from our brief history, we've had some really good matchups with them. And so taking this as an opportunity to build the culture together is enticing. That's one of the main reasons why we were very for it. And again, the prize money is one thing, but all the factors that we've talked about make this more enticing going forward, and seeing what we can come up with.
When it gets to be a $10 million pot, boys, we'll make sure the journalists get some of the share. But until then, I think we're playing for glory, everybody.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
Hey, Darren, you got to be mindful. So in 2022, we won the regular season title, and we had this beautiful shield, USL supporters shield that we won, and Darren got the trophy, which are awesome, but they're not prize money.
By the way, it's over there.
Oh yeah? Well, hey, so here's a good tidbit for you. So we won the regular season title. Like
I was going to tell
Omaha.
the story. This will be good.
This is great. So we win it in Madison. I think that's where everybody clinches, right? Didn't Omaha clinch in Madison this past year?
Sure did.
They did.
So
Yeah, I
if you
think
play in Madison
that's where it
for the end of the
happens,
season,
Rob.
that's where it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no celebration. They didn't have a shield. So a couple weeks later, I'm like, hey, I thought we were getting a shield. And I'm talking to Darren. I'm walking my dog, and I'm like, yeah, we haven't seen the shield yet. And he's like, oh, yeah, they sent it to us. I'm like, what? So it got sent to Tormenta. Darren had to spend his own money, I think, to send the shield back to us. So, he got the big one. We got the shield. So it's interesting. But, the way
By the
that it
way,
works
the
in America.
shield's harder to win. It's a lot harder to win. You
Yeah,
gotta
but
get
with a
hot to
cup,
win
you
this
get a
stuff.
star on your thing, right?
Yeah, that's
So-
Get a
true.
ring too.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That's
true.
awesome. I've
True
never heard
story,
that
though.
story before. That's
It's a
great.
true
That is
story.
good.
I listen. What Rob doesn't fully appreciate was how much time I spent making sure I wrapped it up, and that thing was not going to get injured on my watch as it went back through FedEx.
Yeah.
You guys are nicer than we are for sure. The thing would not have made it there in one piece.
Well, so I know we talked about it a little bit earlier with the regional rivalries. So, with that being a big emphasis in this cup, what are your guys' thoughts on cup matches happening primarily during the week, and possibly reducing chances of opposing fans being able to make the trip to said rival?
If I don't know if you've had a chance to sort of digest the schedule just yet. That's not really how it's worked out. So almost all the games are still on weekends, whether it's a cup weekend or it's a regular season weekend. I don't think we ended up with too many midweek ones. The only one that I'm aware of is the semifinals, which is scheduled midweek. I think I don't know why I can remember it September 11th, other than the notoriety of the date. But I think that's the only. I think that's one of the very few midweek cup games that are scheduled. So theoretically, folks should be able to travel just as easily as any other time. At least that's our schedule. I don't know, Casey and Rob, if you've
Yeah.
sort of seen yours, and it's different.
Ours is the same way. We have,
Yeah.
I was taking a look at this morning. I believe out of our 15 home games just throughout the season, 11 of them are Saturday, one's a Sunday, one's a Friday.
Yeah.
The only other two games that are not, I believe one is a holiday game. I think it's like a 4th of July or 3rd of July type of game on a Wednesday. And then we have a Monday, Labor Day type game. So we really don't have any weekday games. This past year, I think we had 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
So from a day of the week standpoint, I don't know how relevant I guess it is for us, but from the data that we got as well, to I guess answer a further question, Brian, TV wise, we'll talk more about the CBS stuff if you guys would like to, but ESPN wise, we got some of the data back from this year. Some of our top games, I actually believe out of the top 5 most watched games, 3 of them were weekday games. And we thought that was very interesting because people are more likely to watch something when they're at home during the week versus traveling. And so even if that is the case, I believe that our biggest game by far was the game we played in Knoxville on that Tuesday. That was the only game in the country, whether it was MLS Championship League or not. And we were blown away with the numbers of that game. And that was a Tuesday night in August, I want to say, or maybe July. So we're actually impressed with the weekday numbers. So even if that is the case, I don't know if we necessarily are opposed to it, as that it creates more exposure from a digital standpoint. So either way, it's something interesting for us to look at.
Definitely.
Yeah, we only have a couple midweek games. I think July 3rd is one of them. We've been doing fireworks the last couple of years leading into the July 4th celebration. But I think, the challenge with the weeknight games, it's rough on the travel. Sometimes you have to play the weekend before, whether it's home or away. But the other part, I mean, just from a in-stadium experience, moving F&B products, people are more likely to spend more money on a Friday or Saturday night than they are on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. So economically, most of us try and stay off the Wednesday. I think Madison loves Thursday nights. I think they do really,
they
really
like
well on
them on
Thursdays.
They do a good corporate crowd.
Yeah, so that's the challenge, and as that Darren was suggesting, I mean, the schedule is very favorable to everybody. Trying to get us on weekend games is a better rhythm for the players. It gives them more time off. I mean, it's a great life to be a professional soccer player. I think it's one of the coolest things you can do, right? Somebody's paying you to play something that you love, and whether you're making 21,000 or you're making 70,000, like it's just fun. I think the coolest part is signing autographs afterwards, and I think
Yeah.
everybody's trying to make these weekends are when kids can come out and they play their game in the morning and they show up to cheer your players on. It's such a cool thing, and I'm just so glad to see soccer starting to take off. And the fact that people are talking about this League Cup and people are complaining that we're going to have another competition where you can actually win something, and actually instead of just getting a cup or a plate or shield, whatever you call it, you actually get some kind of cash money. Even if it's like $10,000, that's more than you're getting for the regular season, right?
So before the renderings of the cup are released, can we make a suggestion that you can actually drink out of the cup?
Fire away. I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot of design on it because you can't drink out of Rob. You wouldn't know this, but you can't drink out of the final cup that's there. You could serve something on the tray, but you can't drink out of the cup as it could. The W League Cup, I can tell you can drink out of.
If you guys know anything about Northern Colorado, I don't think there's any issue with anybody drinking out of a cup. I can promise you that. I think we'd be for that.
I can't drink out of it because it's capped.
Well, especially with our brand on our jersey, I think that would go hand in hand.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think, Rob, we're going to get any ability to design the cup? I haven't even thought about this.
Right there for you, Casey.
There you go. There's
Pirates.
your shout out to the boys.
Yeah, so I mean, my understanding is they've talked to somebody about helping design the
I
cup.
think so. They have.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's a couple people like we've got somebody that's working on our W League brand. A guy named Alex Kocher who's worked with the Timbers and Thorns, and he does a lot of branding and logos. And when he heard about the cup, he called me right away. He's like, "Man, this sounds awesome," which is cool because I had a bunch of other people say this sounds stupid, but I'm like, I'm an optimist by nature, so I think Alex has been in touch with the league. He works with some other clubs across the USL ecosystem, and I mean, I think there's people that are passionate about this thing that really want to make this thing look awesome. And we want a cool. I think it's better to have a cup that's huge and it's heavy and it's big and it's bold. And we said, hey, this is the League One Cup competition for now. I don't know what the name will be, but you should want to play in this thing. You get some money out of it. You get a cool trophy. I mean, you want to win. That's what soccer's all about. I know last year for us, 2023, the last 15 games, we had, I think, 4 draws and 11 losses. But it would have been nice to be in a cup competition where, we could maybe chase something. We were out of the playoffs fairly early. It's nice to be in another competition. I think that's why the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup is so intriguing overseas.
I agree. Hey, here's what we should do. And this was not my idea this came from another league partner, so I'm not going to steal it. But you make the cup big enough and that whenever the final is taking place, we make sure there's a couple of local craft beers from every city that we're in, and then they ceremoniously get poured into the cup, and the winner gets to celebrate with a little bit of that from everybody. It's a little silly, but I think those would be some really fun traditions. My goodness, if they're drinking milk at the Indianapolis 500, this seems like a kind of a fun idea. And we'll see. I just think that's the kind of stuff that can turn into, to be, you got to do it for a while to make it legendary.
Yeah.
But we're at the beginning. We're trying our best to think about what are some fun ways to do this. How can our fans be involved in this thing just as much as we can? And listen, great ideas can come from anywhere. You guys keep suggesting them. If it's in our power, we'll try to keep them in the mix.
Nice. Yeah, we try to hype up a lot of the microbrews that come from across the country, but predominantly where League One clubs are at, and so it's really cool to get a taste of each of those different regions.
Mm-hmm.
We can have a suitcase of cash and a suitcase of all the something from everybody's city sitting on the sideline, and
there you go. Yep, I like it.
So yeah, that's kind of the innovation that we're talking about, right? And another innovation that is coming with this is the 4th place determiner being goals scored. I know we touched on it earlier. What kind of went into that thought process of making it goals scored as opposed to something that you see somewhere else, like highest points or a goal differential?
Well, you guys can go. I'm pausing because I'm trying to think. I think myself, we were certainly in a creative mode while we were brainstorming some things.
Casey,
Yeah.
did you suggest that since you had Trevor Ammon?
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
I
We
mean, I
we-
think it had something to do with just emphasizing offense.
for sure. I mean, it was definitely emphasizing the aggressiveness and trying to make sure that we have higher scoring games versus the 1-0s. If we're going to add this cup to this schedule, we wanted to make it exciting, and none of us want 1-0 games or 0-0 and going to PKs. And so, if you're promoting higher attacks, higher scores, I think it's better for the fans in general, but also you're being more aggressive. And so, is that the right move forever? Who knows? It's something worth trying, though. You know what I mean? It's different than what other people are doing. We might as well see some higher scores, and I think it would be very unlikely to have someone that's lost, all 4 games, but lost every game 8-6. That's while that could be a scenario, I think that's unlikely. You're probably going to see probably the fourth or fifth best team also having higher scores.
Yeah.
But you want to push the envelope a little bit. So I think it makes sense from an aggressiveness standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And if it does, so what? It's not impacting our regular season. We kept all that in place. We gave ourselves a chance to experiment a bit, but it's not terribly out of out of line. We'll see. We'll see what we'll do. And I think the subtitle of this whole thing is we reserve the right to get smarter. And we need our fans to help us get smarter. Here's our blueprint for year 1.
And that kind of comes along with some of the competitive innovations that the league said is open and available for future years. You have 2 matches outside of group stage matches. You're opening up the possibility of throwing in extra clubs from other leagues. I guess, what are some of the competitive innovations that you would each like to see in the coming years?
Oh, that's a good one. I've got one to take out for a test run, but I'm always curious about Rob. Rob and I talk about this stuff a lot, and thankfully he does walk his dogs a lot because that's his prime time for talking. I think you got to hear one of them a second ago, but I don't know. I mean, listen, there can be goofy ideas. I'm really not interested in goofy. There are some league partners who are, just because let's try something to see if it works. I love thinking out loud about them, but part of me thinks about, all right, what have other sports done? When the NBA put out a 3-point line, wasn't that crazy? I mean, do we do something like that? I don't know. That might be a terrible idea. But this is the part where we at least get a chance to think about some ideas. It gives us a bit of a laboratory, but to still play the most popular game in the world. And I'm convinced it's also the most popular thing in the world, in this sport that we like. And how do we make ourselves relevant, fun, exciting for our fans? Listen, our fans are going to tell us if something's not working, but it's a great venue to sort of talk about it. I don't know. Let's see what Rob and Casey think, because now Rich and Bryan, you're going to get interviewed. I want to know, what would you guys do? To be fair, you two probably sit around thinking about these kind of things more than the 3 of us.
You guys want to go first? You want some of Rob and I to do this?
We're going to take over this show, Casey, and start asking these guys questions.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'll throw in Rich and Bryan. Darren talks about the wacky ideas. We're used to the minor league baseball side as well. We've come from a minor league baseball background for the last 20 years. We embrace the wacky side, but we also are baseball purists. And so from a soccer side, Rob and Darren have way more experience on the soccer side than myself and my father. I would say one thing we try and push towards, and this is just an own personal thing, this is not the consensus of the league at all, is to create ways that there's more competitive balance, but still increasing fandom. And I think a way to do that is, I would eventually like to get rid of the tie. I want to make each game either a win or a loss, or go similar towards an NHL model where if you go to overtime, you're rewarded for doing so. It gives you more incentive to try and win the game. And again, we're still learning in this league. We've had the success so far, but we've had 2 years of it. It doesn't say as much. How do we figure out if fans are looking for a win and loss? That's coming from a baseball mentality. It doesn't make it the right mentality, but that's the mentality that we have. That is something that we want to figure out. Are there creative ways to make games more enticing at the end? And we've had some great matches the last couple of years for sure, whether they're ties or not. Can we create opportunities where maybe there's a way to be similar to an NHL model where you then make overtime more exciting without it making that much longer of an event? You know what I mean? Because you don't want the events going on for like 2 hours. If you play golden goal and nobody scores for 2 hours, that's worse. But maybe some sort of incentive going forward that makes games have a decision that I think adds to the point system going forward is that you're going to see some higher point totals. If you're taking away with the cup some of the statistics, because that was one of the concerns that we might have had, is that you talk about Trev, Rich, no one's getting 23 goals, right? With taking 8 games away from it, you're not going to see that again. And if that happens, sign me up to see that for sure. But now that's a record that might be untouchable for a while. Versus, can we create more things that are adding more statistics that bring that baseball type of number, that DiMaggio's and Mantle's type of number, then maybe you can have a higher point system because you're getting more out of every game, win or lose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They might disagree with me on that though.
Well, I only disagree on. I got Emmy Terzaghi making a full return to health and chasing down that 23 goals in those 22 games. So I'm putting my money in. I know Omaha got their shots in on their little video they did. I mean, but I think if I'm not mistaken, what I was shared with, and it is what it is. I think they put him a Neymar, which is kind of a compliment because Neymar scores a ton of goals. So I think that Emmy might hunt Trevor down this upcoming season, a healthy Emmy. So I'll
Just
put that out there.
listening to you guys talk, I just want to get some popcorn and just
But
keep listening. Listen, we've had our own guy in that mix and
yeah.
Kaz the last couple of things. I didn't really think about the records piece, but this is the kind of fun stuff we get to do, and Rob's probably about to add some things here. But if you'll notice, we're just talking about inside this cup competition. Nobody's touching regular season games. No one's. I mean, okay, there may be fewer for records, but listen, I wouldn't put past either the 2 stars on the teams these guys just talked about and what could happen in just a shorter season. But the cup gives us a chance to see what else we could do. Anyway, Rob, I'm talking on.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you look at this, I mean, it's funny. People send me all the social media stuff. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my social media. But I get all these people are like, hey, what about this? And did you guys, the Players Association, and like, there's all this stuff. Like, we're trying to make this best experience for the players, and this cup competition is great. And I think somebody sent me, I don't know, the question was about, well, you only have 22 regular season games and all these different permutations. Like, to me, this is like nothing's changed. We're going to get you 30 games guaranteed. If you make it into the playoffs, you make it into the semifinals of this cup, there's more games to be had, right? There's potentially 1 to 5 more games for each team, right? So there's some excitement. We look at this all, it's 2 different competitions, but it's still the same thing, right? They're really, I think most people do their season ticket packages. We've done 16 tickets, 16 home games, although we only have 30 on the schedule. We're working on the other fulfillment piece now with the exhibition. So, there's change, but we're trying to make sure that long term, I think pro rel is best for the players. There was some, I think Casey was hitting on it there. It wasn't unanimous on the point system for 3 for a win, 1 for a draw. Like, I'll tell you personally, my position is you get 3 for a regular victory. If it goes right to penalty kicks and you win, you get 2. And if you lose the penalty kicks, you get 0. Like, I don't know. Why would you give somebody some for getting? I mean, I don't know. So maybe I'm an extremist, but that really emphasizes, you guys got good at penalty kicks, or if you're not good at penalty kick, go chase the game late and try and win it. And I think, both of these guys, have seen success on the field with their teams. I think scoring goals late is really a hallmark of the best teams when they make their runs. I mean, Omaha does it. we did it in 2022, Northern Colorado. I mean, you guys just scored a ton of goals, especially against us. So it was not a pleasant trip to NoCo. But I think, we want this to be innovative, but we also want to be serious because,
Mhm.
we're trying to do right by the soccer community. And what they don't want, I mean, I played in the old USISL and all the different versions of the APSL and these different leagues and indoor, and everybody's tried stuff. I mean, I played in games where you could foul out. I know there was only kick-ins. They had the 35-yard shootouts. So I've been in all these different venues and different competition tweaks. But I mean, it's still soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. And for me, the traditional part, scoring goals. I think that's why the four slot. I mean, three teams are going to be the best teams based on their pod. And then that 14, I mean, it could be anybody. That's the beauty of our league. I mean, on any given day, anybody can win. Like last year, in the last 15 games, I think I said we drew four. I think in all but the 11 losses, only two of those games were by more than one goal. So you're always in the game in our league, and that's part of the beauty of it. And that's why the penalties. I mean, so many kids love watching penalties. I think there's a proposal. I'm not sure if we voted on it or not, but there's been a suggestion that if you come to Richmond, we've already predetermined where we're going to take the penalty kicks. It's going to
Absolutely.
be on the Red Army side, and I think that gives some benefit to packing the Red Army section, right? And then our
Mhm.
suite section is right there too. So how do you make it so everybody knows where the penalties are going to be beforehand, and it creates some demand and some excitement around those tickets and those seats, and we just want a really fun fan experience. And you don't have to love the cup. We get that, but for us, we're trying to set our players up and our clubs up for future success with a pro rel situation.
I will tell you, Rob. By the way, you guys should get Rob on your show more often. He and Casey are spot on here. The players, our players that I've spoken to, they love this thing. They're all in, and I think it's helpful for fans to know players are excited about it too. Relevancy and freshness, and listen, talking about the U.S. Open Cup's a different thing. But right now, if you're in USL League One, the way I see it, we have four different titles to play for. We've got a regular season traditional that we've had. We've got the final to play for. We've got a cup competition to play for, and then trying to get further than any of our league partners in the Open Cup. Those are four titles, and those four titles, I know they mean a lot to our players and our team and our staff. I have no doubt that other clubs think about the same way, and I don't see how that's a negative. That's a giant positive. And listen, in this place like Statesboro, Georgia, super thrilled and honored we got to win a final. But when you come into the city limits in Statesboro, Georgia, right now, there are literally 7 different arteries that you can come in by car. All 7 of them have those green transportation signs that say "Welcome to Statesboro, home of Tormenta FC, 2002 USL League One champions." Well, that's local soccer. That's the exciting stuff that you get to do. Those signs aren't going down. So we can talk about prize money. That's fine too. We're playing for transportation signs as much as anything. And I say that obviously with tongue in cheek, but those are the fun things because that when people that live here and if they want to own what we're doing, that's often how it will manifest.
I think you're giving your fans ideas for TIFO right now.
Keep going. Let's go. But
Really,
listen, I think Rob and Casey really have said it wonderfully well, far better than I have on the way we think about this stuff. We are still clubs that are all hardwired trying to win titles, trying to win championships. We're keeping score. This is serious stuff, but it's still soccer, it's still sport. We have an important role in our communities. We're not solving all of our community problems, but it certainly is a way to throw our arms around each other in a community and to cheer for something that we get to share and have a common bond with each other. I get in these things, and you've heard me say before, the League One owners, I just think we're a little ahead of maybe where some of the other leagues are. We have a lot of respect for each other. We speak to each other a lot. We do not disagree. I mean, we do not agree on all the right paths to go, but our level of respect is high. And at the end of the day, once we decide something, we've tried to sort of get behind it and let's move on. Let's get with it and keep going. Whether the debate was vigorous or whether it was is shouting, I don't think we shout a lot, but it, it takes a lot of it takes a lot of time and detail.
I'll add this, Rich and Bryan, if you don't mind as well.
Sure.
We've been a part of multiple different leagues and multiple different sports. This is by far the most respect that I've seen from owners back and forth. It's extremely impressive. Again, we're just jumping in, but the relationships that we've built over the last 2.5 years has been awesome. I mean, we all have the same mindset, whether we agree or disagree on everything. We all have the same mindset. We'd like to move forward in as successful a way as possible. We're also fans of our own teams.
Yeah.
We're fans of the league, and so we also we care, right? And I think that that's important for our fans and people like yourselves that support us so much, that we support you at the same time. I mean, Rob and Darren are great examples of how an owner should be. They understand this is what we want to do that's for our club, that's going to better our club. How are we going to better our community? But how do we better the league? And sometimes that's making your opponent also have success at the same time. And we were welcomed in with open arms. That's tough to see sometimes in sports. The accessibility of the owners. I mean, these are real people. Darren and Rob are great examples. They're real human beings that you can talk to and have a conversation with. In sports, that's not always the case. You don't see everybody in their community being a part of it, right? And so when we opened up the show and you guys are talking about your ideas and how receptive we are to fans, we're not always the smartest people in the room. We like to hear what other people think as well to make our game better. Because if we're the only people that are watching our own games, it's not a super successful league. You know what I mean? And so we'd like to be able to be more collaborative going forward, but the collaborativeness that we already have from the ownership groups is impressive, and hope that the fans that are watching this see, hey, our owners care. We want to make sure we're doing the best that we possibly can to move our teams forward, to make our communities care, to have travel signs that have champions on them. That you kidding me? That would be awesome, right? That's what we try and fight for as well. And so that's what drives us to be better owners going forward. But hope that you guys, Bryan and Rich, you guys do an awesome job supporting this league and making sure your voices are heard as well. I watch and I try and listen as much as possible, whether it's you guys or some of the other podcasts as well. I watch some of you guys' stuff and I'm like, oh, that was a heck of a good idea, right? Why don't we talk about that in our meetings? Oh, wow, I didn't think of that. Or yeah, maybe that wasn't the greatest idea of all time. So hopefully you guys feel like you're a part of it as well, because that is important, to be able to feel like you're being valued in the way that we would like. And hopefully you guys feel the same from the ownership groups of the teams you're representing.
Yeah, that's really generous, Casey. Appreciate you saying so.
That's probably the nicest thing that I'll say to him, at least until the season starts.
Well said, Casey.
Also true. By the way, both can be true.
Well, we appreciate the compliments there,
Yeah,
Casey. And I mean, we're certainly big fans of all of you, and super excited to have you on the show. We only have about maybe 10 minutes left, so we're trying to fit in as many questions as we can. We're getting some fan questions here, both submitted on Twitter and through YouTube. You were just speaking about some of the growth in League One in the coming years. This question is actually inspired by a question submitted on Twitter from RC Red Army, and there was a projection leading up to the 2026 World Cup that there's going to be a lot of League One teams. What can League One do to make it as smooth as possible transition for clubs to get into League One? And what do you think is the biggest obstacle for clubs coming into League One?
Rob, that sounds like one of your people. You want to take it head on, or you want us to answer it?
I mean, we've heard from 2019 all these teams are coming in. I mean, the reality is, as an owner, everybody wants to be in a professional team. They want to own a team. They want to have it in their city because it's good for the community and it brings people together. And soccer is such a lovable sport to watch and be around. Plus, it's only 2 hours, right? It doesn't keep you there for 3 or 4 hours like baseball sometimes can. I know the league is working hard. Leo Neal's been great since he's come on in the last year. It really kind of reinvigorated our leadership group. And I think what we're starting to see, I mean, the phone calls that we've been having with potential owners coming into the league, I think there's more transparency about it, and it's expensive. Like if you're going to come into the league, you're going to lose some money, and that's a hard thing. Everybody says, "Oh no, I know how to do this right," but you can still do it right, and you can still lose money because there are things that you don't control. Um, if you look on the league's website, I think they've got some listed potential teams for next year. I don't know. I know we can't confirm or deny any of those, but
I
it's
think
our
some of them.
understanding.
I think some of them have definitely been made public.
Yeah, so I'll let Darren outload those people, but it sounds like we're gonna have 15 or 16 teams next year, right? I think I've already said that.
Yeah.
But the more teams that you get in, it helps you on the travel, it helps you on the rivalries. And we want teams that come in and stay, not teams that play like 1 year. I mean, it's tragedy to lose Lansing in year one. I know we've lost Tucson, we've lost the MLS clubs. I mean, the reality is some of those MLS clubs didn't want to leave. They love the competition. They love having Ricardo Pepe come into City Stadium in front of 4,000 people and score 2 goals when he's 16 years old and thump us. And then everybody's telling me my team sucks. And I'm like, that kid's pretty special. He's probably going to play in a World Cup one day. And they're like, what are you talking about? And then the next game, they're like, man, you were right. So I think the competitive cauldron is a word that I love. And I think that's what our league provides. You're going to see more teams. I mean, this is the league, and I mean, I've said this in board meetings to people. I believe this is the league. If you're going to come into the soccer ecosystem as a professional owner, this is your best bet to break even or make money because I mean, it's just the economics of it. It's just better. It's easier. It's less expensive than the championship. It's got great structure, unlike other leagues that have come in at the D3 level. I just think it's a great opportunity. And the nice part for us and Darren and Casey both have referred to it. It's nice to have like-minded people. A lot of the owners in the league, they don't just own it and show up every game every once in a while. Like Darren travels on the bus with his team, he and his wife both oftentimes. So, we're in the weeds on this stuff. We have wonderful staff that puts on these games and operates the different specialty parts of the business, but we're all active in the day to day. And I think that's the beauty of our league. You'll see Darren at a game day, you'll see Casey, you'll see me. I mean, heck, I mean, my favorite thing on game day is, when we do the pre-work before the game is picking up trash in the parking lot. I put my
I've
earbud
seen
in,
it.
I listen.
He does it.
It's one of my favorite things because it's like the calm before the storm. Like I see all the warts and things in the stadium that's built in 1929, and we get it shined up, and you watch these kids walk in and their eyes light up and they're just drawn to the players, and it's just a magical experience. So I think we're getting there with our league. I think our league has the best chance to break through quickly. And you'll see a lot of teams follow because once teams start to see the sustainability and there's such a great bunch of guys that are telling the right story and giving people honest feedback on what it takes to be successful.
Yeah. I have so much to say that too, but I want to respect your questions you said you had coming in. Remember, 2019 was when we started. The pandemic rather, really caused some rethinking about how fast it could go. And quite frankly, to our current leadership's credit, especially Leo Neal's at the league level, is really making sure our team's ready. And that's probably that filter got tightened up a lot. But there's more coming.
So I know earlier we did mention the words promotion and relegation. So in the YouTube live chat, as I'm sure you can imagine, there is quite a few questions about pro rel. So I'm going to kind
Let's
of
do it.
combine a few of them together here. So the first question is from Ewan, and they ask, for teams that have 5,000 seat stadiums, what solutions are being thought of for when pro rel, and took it a step further and say D1 sanctioning eventually happen?
Well, I can speak to that. So most of League One currently meets Division Two sanctioning. That's probably a helpful way to start this conversation. Listen, I'm not sure anybody in the USL has our minds on Division One sort of things. I'll just set that to the side for a second. But our stadiums are the right size. I mean, City Stadium is phenomenal place to go and play. Usually, and then when you can go firsthand and see this complex that's being built in northern Colorado, it is completely epic. Not just for what's being built, but in the number of different sports that are there, the training, the bubble. I know you guys call it probably something else, Casey. We're trying to do our own things here at Tormenta. I don't think we have a stadium problem, Bryan, when it comes to shifting landscapes. I don't know. Rob and Casey may feel differently. I think we've got some new partners who are in some maybe some temporary settings that aren't conducive to that, but those are pretty temporary. I just
Yeah,
think there's a problem on stadiums.
I couldn't agree more to that. The
Mhm.
stadium issue, Darren said it correctly. There's some beautiful stadiums in our league and in Championship League as well. I don't think it's a stadium issue. I mean, we've been trying to build our stadium. You talk about COVID for 3.5, 4 years now, which knock on wood, we don't get another travesty that we're going to be playing it this year. But our stadiums are all meeting essentially the requirements, and the interest is also there. It's not a secret. I mean, there's clearly interest from us to be able to figure out what a solution is for this type of
Yeah.
whatever you might call it, solution maybe. This is something that hasn't really been done before in this area, and so there's a lot of questions. And so I'd rather, in my opinion, there be questions with interest than people shooting down stuff, right? And so
Yeah.
if stadiums were an issue, that would have been shot down super quickly. Is that obviously we weren't able to meet the capacities that were needed, but that's not necessarily the case. And the people that are in temporary stadiums now, such as us, and some of the other teams in our league, they're obviously working on bigger stadium deals or bigger, obviously, plans going forward. But there's a lot of excitement with this prospect. It's really making sure that we hone it in and do it correctly. And I think that everyone, from my perspective, would agree that doing it correctly would make more sense than not doing it correctly. And there is interest on multiple sides. There's probably more interest from our side because we have obviously less risk, that we would love to be able to move up. I'm sure people would love to not move down. But with that said, that's sports, that's competition. Well, we're not signing up for
Mhm.
easy, right? And so if it's something that's going to allow us to take that next step, whether it's up or down, I think that's probably better for the sport in general.
Yeah, I think with the pro rel thing, I mean, I think these arbitrary things that US Soccer has put out, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I
You're
mean, all
doing
these things
fine.
are,
Keep going, Rob.
I mean, it's all arbitrary, right? Um, you look at Leeds, they were up in the Premier League, they dropped back in like that place, they love their team. Like all the interest and all the revenues are really local. There's no national partnerships right now, right? There's no TV money coming in that's going to save the day for us. So, pro rel to me, as this thing gets worked out over the next year or two, hopefully, you know, it's something that happens. What's the economic benefit to going up, right? Because if you go up and you're going to bounce straight back down, and there's no help. We just talked about prize money. We have prize money for winning. There's going to be some prize money for this League Cup, but there's nothing for winning the league regular season or the playoff tournament, right? So there's a lot of things that have to be worked out in the pro
Mhm.
rel space. But all the revenues are local. This is why I think there's such a great push, and there's so much pushback on MLS. Is like these Open Cup games are so great for our community. If we have FC Charlotte come in, people are interested. We raise our ticket prices. They come in, and it's a great chance to see an MLS team in your home stadium. We have had some great battles with DC United. We beat Landon Donovan, the Galaxy, many years ago. It was great. Alexi's sitting in the press box, can't figure out how his team's going to lose this game, but they do. They bring on Landon late, and he has a little bit of a fit, and that's why you love it, because you get to see these players that
Gotcha.
you love seeing play for the U.S. play in your stadium, and they get beat every once in a while. And most of the time they win, but you just have these experiences. So as I look at this thing, all the things, there's a lot of reasons you shouldn't do it. We've been in championship. We were in there in 2018. Before that, I mean, we were a regular championship team. I can tell you for a fact, if we had stayed in the championship when COVID hit, we would be out of business. It would be that simple. So we're all trying to figure out the long-term sustainability and viability of our clubs. Certainly more revenues is helpful, less costs, less expenses. So trying to find that happy balance, and other part is making sure we take great care of our players, and they have an environment where they feel loved, and they come into a stadium and they feel the love and the joy of the fans. Our mantra is joyful, authentic, united. And for us, if pro rel is coming, that's wonderful. We think has to make sense for everybody. And I think whether you move up or you move down, your revenues are always based in your franchise valuation, all the things that people talk about why you shouldn't do pro rel. It's all local. like, can you connect with your local fan base? That's why some of the pushback was, we're going to do another cup. We can't even explain the regular season to our fans. Well, that's a local problem. Like, how do you connect with your local soccer lovers? You know, whether it's the US groups, whether it's the local, we have a big Arsenal group and Liverpool and all these different groups. I mean, how do you connect with these people and say, hey, why don't you come out on a Saturday night and watch a local grassroots game, support your community? You can still love Liverpool or Man City or whoever you
They're on in the
celebrate and
mornings.
cheer on, right? Yeah, you can watch them earlier. You can party all day with soccer, right? But for us, I think it's coming. I think there's a lot of hard work to do. And, everybody's going to have to sacrifice a little bit to make it happen. But, what do they say in Ted Lasso? Believe. I mean, we're all about
I love
that.
it.
So
I love it. And think about what Rob is saying. I mean, also the Jeopardy does make a difference. Um, and I think playing for something really, really does matter. One last thing on all this, though, I think it's important for your listeners to know the standards of the championship in League One are higher than U.S. soccer standards for each of those on a stadium standpoint. So that's a long way to answer.
No, I know it was a great answer. And
Yeah.
what Rob was talking about actually leads into a question from Soup Loops, who's a friend of the pod. And
Mhm,
Darren, actually, you've met him,
mhm.
his wife and his kid. So with the recent drama and the PR mess that MLS is going through, I'm not going to ask about Open Cup, but tangentially, with the PR fiasco that they're experiencing right now, do you think that this is a good time for USL to make big moves?
It's a good question.
I think
I'll take it. You
I
want me to
think
take it, Darren?
I'll go. I'll just to go first,
Yeah.
and then Rob, I'll set you up. I think it's always a good time to make big moves. I don't think one time's better than the other. Listen, I don't mind saying I think the league put out an important statement. I think, and so right now I think we'll all stand by the statement that came out of the USL. But our our league is about fans, and we're about local soccer, and we're here to play and to keep score. And it is the nation's cup, for example, right? I mean, it's 108 years old. Let's I have a little reverence about things that are 108 years old. But your question was less about the cup. It was more about, is it time to make a big moves? I think since I met Rob. By the way, I knew Rob as a player first. You got to go see some of these YouTube highlights of Rob Ukrop playing. I mean, they are legit. But back to the pieces, it's time to making big moves. I think League One's been making big moves since Weaver announced we were going to play. I don't think one time's been even more important than another. And if you just peered inside of what each of our organizations are doing, I don't think any of us feel like we're doing something small. Rob, I'm going to hand it off to you and let you run with it.
No, I don't think it's big moves. I think we consistently do what we've been doing. What do they say? My granddad used to say, "Slow and steady wins the race." So we have some basic principles that we operate with respect for each other. We make sometimes decisions that one of us doesn't love, but the other 11 do. And I think this is an opportunity where we can really highlight grassroots local soccer. What's happening in our local communities. I mean, forget the soccer part. The things that Darren and Casey and the Richmond Kickers are doing in their own community, inspiring young kids to find a love for the game, working at food banks, volunteering, teaching, underserved kids and communities. Like, that's what we're all about. I know MLS is the big behemoth out there. They're the big giant, and they've been around. I mean, heck, we have our coach because of a relationship that I had in the very first year of MLS in 1996. And while it's great to see MLS be so successful and all these franchise 500 million to buy in, I mean, we're all doing the same thing. We're trying to improve the quality of life in our community. And as you look at that, that's what we want to be celebrated for. And when you start to celebrate those things, it brings out a bigger crowd. It doesn't bring out just soccer people. It's like, hey, you're the guys that came over to the children's hospital and met with my kid. We want to check you guys out. And thank you for doing that. All these little things makes our community stronger and better. And to me, those are the big moves, the little things that you make your community stronger and better. And I think you're starting to see the momentum that people are starting to have. I mean, Darren's got a brand new stadium down there that he's built. I think he's just got some recent funding to finish it off, and it's really exciting for all these different pieces. And we're not competing with MLS. We're trying to compete with
Yeah.
creating opportunities for young Americans to find their start in the game, in the professional game. You're starting to see people get sold from the USL ecosystem overseas, and I think MLS is a little bit envious of how easy that's becoming for some of our athletes. And you are starting to see, we started a bunch of 16, 17, and 18-year-olds this past year. So the game is getting younger. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I don't really think the big moves is a big move. I think what we're doing quietly together and the unity that we show, I think that really moves us and propels us forward.
Well said.
Casey, any thoughts on that?
Rob and Darren said it very well. I mean, I guess to add any point to that, our goal as a league is to be as united with soccer in the United States and worldwide as much as we can, while also not being reliant on other leagues to make decisions for us. And so, yes, the MLS is an incredible league and obviously created the highest level of soccer that we've seen in this country. We have our own aspirations, and so we don't necessarily look at the moves that they make to dictate what we should or shouldn't do. Yes, it's important that we're not doing things to step on toes if we don't have to. But similar to what we talked about earlier about the Open Cup or the USL League One Cup that we're doing this year, that's our decision, right? We made the decision because that's what we want to do. We're not doing it to try and compete with another league, whether it's NISA or Championship League or MLS. We're doing it because we're trying to be self-reliant. And so if that's the approach that we're going to try and take, it's always a time to take big moves if that's what we decide to do to better our league, despite potentially what other people might think from other leagues or what they're doing and stuff like that.
Nice. I love the fact that you said we're not even looking at MLS. Like, we're just worried about, our own stuff. That's cool. I like that. You're not being influenced by MLS. That's cool. Do we have time for one more question, everybody?
Go for it.
Let's do it. Rob doesn't sleep, and I think Casey's on a better time zone.
We're in Mountain Time. We're chilling.
Rich, did you have one in mind that you wanted to ask?
No, go for it.
So I mean, we've got a couple other kind of questions. I think we've covered most of them. But this one is also coming from Soup Loops, saying not really a question, but talking about the thing they look forward to the most with ProRel is longer player contracts and being able to hold on to your best players because you have the prospect of moving up. So just maybe speaking on that as well, if ProRel weren't to be a thing, I know obviously you want to move your best players on. Obviously, that's how the league is going to function and how it's going to get better. But what do you guys as owners think you can do to maybe quell some of the people's apprehension about new faces coming in and not necessarily knowing who they are until they get there?
I mean, I think our league is. I mean, there's new faces every year. There's a massive amount of turnover. I can tell you, when the collective bargaining agreement came in play from before last year, we are trying to figure out how to handle it because there's a lot of 1+1 contracts. I know I don't handle the contracts for us. We have a sporting director that does that, but I know Darren handles that on his end. But as we look at it, the Richmond Kickers in our 30+ years of history, the teams we've been most successful with are when we kept a strong core of people, high character guys that love the community. Some met their spouse here. They love Richmond and keeping that core together. So one of the things we've tried to do, and I mean, we have had multiple players on 3-year deals. Getting away from the 1+1 because it's tricky, right? Because if they have a good year, they want more money. If they have a bad year, they want to keep. So for us, we want to be fair. Like when we negotiate with players, we want to be upfront. We might not spend as much money as other teams, but we have other advantages. We love the fact that you're going to get to play in front of 5,000 people almost every home game, assuming the weather's good, right? We have this atmosphere. We have a thriving metropolitan city that's growing with a lot of young folks that are loving the city engagement that you can find with the James River. So we have all these different things that we're selling, but for us, we want to make sure that we take care of the guys the best we can, and then they know they feel loved and they're part of the community, whether it's coaching, whether it's when they go in the grocery store and somebody walks up and says, "Hey, are you Dak Barnathan? Like I've seen you play. Can I get your autograph?" Like that's powerful when you walk down the street and there's Emmy Terzaghi with his daughter, riding her bike, and you're like, "Hey, it's Emmy," these are things we want to make these guys really important in our city. And I think we're trying to find those guys that want to be here because, there are guys that are going to be here for a year and want to move on to the next league or want to move on to the next team or chase a little bit more money. But I've always found when I played, and I think you could ask a lot of former players, but if you find an environment where you feel happy and you feel loved and you feel valued, winning is important and you want to win, but you want to be part of building that culture. And I think that's a really significant part in the league. So, pro rel, the danger of that is when you get promoted up. I mean, looking at NCFC right now, they're going to have some turnover. They're going to bring in some higher. I mean, they brought in a lot of championship level players last year, but they're going to keep driving some of those, and some of those people that people love that played League One, they're going to have to find a new team. So I think that's the challenge of it all. But for us, we like to do multi-year contracts with guys that we have great confidence and belief that want to be here because in all these cities you have to want to be there, right? That's an important part of our league.
I think the multi-year contract is. We try to sign everybody as long as we can. We've had great success with one of our Tormenta legends who's going to be a Richmond kicker now next year, and Pablo Hara. Rob, I was with Pablo for an hour and a half tonight. We went to dinner and helping him pack up because he's headed to Rob, and we had to get in a bidding war, but Pablo will completely change the locker room and change the city of Richmond. He's just that kind of a force multiplier. But getting people on long-term contracts, usually the challenge is not at the club, it's at the player and the agent initially when you're signing those pieces, because remember, players still think they're going to keep making the jump. I think Rob's insight is spot on, and I think the older a player gets, the more likely they are to start seeing the value of some longevity and tenures. But listen, it's a sports problem across every league, anywhere else in the world. And, when you can lock players up a long time and people will love it. And, I mean, every club wants the same sort of character. I think if you look at this particular year, it's a unique one. 80% of the players in League One this year on all rosters combined were out of contract or weren't re-signed or something. So it was a fairly unique offseason. We've never had more than 25-30% turnover, and we're at 80 this particular year. So that presents some challenges, and those are the ones you try to avoid.
We always try and look as long term as we can. We try and trust our coaches and our scouts of, hey, if they like this person in the first place, we want to keep them as long as we can. We also don't want to hinder growth. And so it's no secret we're a league that's trying to promote players to go to the next and higher level. We've seen, I think, a record amount of players already that have shown that they've gone from League One to Championship League with high talent, high contracts to great teams. And we don't want to stop that. I'm not going to go stop Trev and Arthur from going to teams that they want to go to. Of course, we want to keep them, two best players in the league. But also, we don't want to stop them from doing what they want to do. They're both, I think Trev's 25, Arthur's 26. They have a lot of playing left, right? Versus guys that are maybe 32, 33 that just want to play. They want to play as long as they possibly can. But we also, Rob and Darren have a lot of this as well. We have a lot of young talent that are quote unquote unnamed yet, right? People are still learning how much talent they have. A good example from our side, I know you guys are familiar with our team. Bruno Rendon is a great example. Guy came from Nisa, great relationship with our assistant head coach, came in and took a chance, linebacker type of body, 23 years old. And so let's give him a shot. Let's see if he can make a household name, see how much he loves the community. I mean, we're all in communities that are as good as it gets. I mean, we talk about the growth in League One. You look at each League One team's community, there's a reason why they're there. They're very specific type of communities. Richmond is an incredible place to live. South Georgia is beautiful. And we're obviously biased. Fort Collins and Windsor area, it's tough to find places better to live than that. And so people, when they come to these areas, they want to be household names in the community that they're in. And we want to keep them as long as possible. We want to keep them household names as long as we possibly can. Because then once Bruno's 26, we think he can be the best player in the league, right? So we want to give him as much of an opportunity to do so versus having him jump super early. We also want to stop at the same time. So we're always going to want to keep players as long as possible, while also making sure, hey, this player is going to go up. We don't need to make some sort of a bad relationship with them and stop their growth from going to the places that they want to go to. We're going to root for them We're going to watch Sacramento Republic games and root for Trev. We're going to watch Tulsa games and root for Artie. But on top of that, too, like we'd love to keep as many of our young players here as much as possible to grow the league as much as we can.
Great answers all around. Well, I really appreciate Darren, Rob, Casey, all of you coming on tonight. This has been a truly special episode to get some quality insight, not only on the behind the scenes look at how you are running your clubs, but also the club, the new cup that's going to be debuting in the 2024 season. So thank you all for joining us, and I really appreciate this time with you all.
A lot of fun. You get 3 owners. That's pretty. This might be the first podcast in the history of histories where that's happened. Who knows? Let's go over the top with it. Anyway, it was fun. I'm always smarter when I'm in the room with these guys.
Well, thanks again for having us. We're honored to be part of the league. We're honored to facilitate these clubs, these great clubs, and making a difference in the community. And I know people are wanting more Open Cup statements. Hopefully, they're coming soon. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Like, we want MLSN, man, right? We love trying to beat them. It's great. Everybody, gets to make that run. You get to knock off the big boy. I think Pittsburgh, I think a lot of these clubs have already posted about, I guess they're afraid of some of these USL teams, which is a good problem, right? So we haven't even made any moves yet. We're just trying to do the things that we know we can do well. And, hopefully they'll rise to the challenge. And, when they do come hopefully they're going to play. We want to make sure that as a punishment, they should have to come play in USL stadiums. I think that will be the great tipping point, because it's wonderful, right? It's wonderful when DC United comes to Richmond. When you have
like
these
where we
larger clubs.
mandated it instead of just drawn out of a hat, Rob, right?
Yeah, the random hat draw, right? Like,
Yeah.
we went up to play DC last year. They had a whole 800 people at Audi Field. They didn't even live stream the game. Like 800 people. It's crazy. So anyway, I probably not allowed to talk about this topic, but hey, we love the Open Cup. Bring it on.
You
A
said
lot
it
of fun
best,
tonight.
Rich and Bryan, from our side as well, thank you again for having us, for having myself as well. Big fan of what you guys do. From my perspective, we want you guys to hear this from us as well. You have a lot of power, and your passion and your fandom for what we do continues to drive our passion as well. Please keep doing what you're doing. We love watching. We love seeing the ideas you guys have. We want to make sure that you guys are getting the most out of this experience as well, because you don't have to be fans of what we're doing. You choose to be fans. And so we want to make sure that we're continuously giving you more reasons to be passionate about this league. That gives us more passion in return. So please keep doing what you're doing. It does not go unnoticed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, guys.
All right, everybody, that is
Thanks.
another episode of League One on the Rocks. We will be back with another episode very shortly. We don't know when that episode is going to be, since we're running up on the holidays, but as soon as we have another one lined up, we will let you know, and we'll get that going. Another big thanks to Darren, Rob, and Casey for joining us tonight, and we will see you at the next episode.